G'day, mate. 40 here. So Australia won a magnificent Test cricket victory over India at the MCG over the past 5 days, just concluded yesterday. The Melbourne Cricket Ground, MCG, can hold up to about 120,000 people. That a record crowd. And whenever India plays in Australia, the pro-India side usually significantly outdraws the pro-Australian side. And I don't think that's a good thing. Right, you move to Australia and then you show up and cheer instead, not for your newly adopted country, but for your old country. I don't think that's good for social trust and social cohesion. On the other hand, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it fades over time. The more generations that go by that separate immigrants from their home country, the more and more likely they will primarily identify with their home country. So not a good sign when first, second generation immigrants still primarily identify with the old country. But on the other hand, I don't think it's that big of a deal either. There are more important things to worry about. So Los Angeles social trust and social cohesion is not significantly damaged by the presence of San Francisco Giants fans in Southern California and vice versa. So a commonsensical center-left writer who I enjoy is Helen. She writes for The Atlantic, and she's written a long piece on genius. I think it's actually a book. So she's got a book coming out on genius. Here we go.
Well, people ask us all the time, but we say no. And but you have a book, and it's topical. It's not out yet, but you've written it and you've submitted it.
I've finally written it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Genius Myth. Right? Next year.
Next summer, yeah. Out in the middle of June next year. Maybe even published in the US, this one. My previous one was very British, so it only had a British publisher. But the final chapter is Elon Musk, because I think that he is one of my contentions in the book is that whichever people get nominated as geniuses, as this sort of special category of people, tell you a lot about what a society values, or the arguments that it's trying to work out amongst itself.
Oh, genius does have a technical definition in the intelligence literature, in psychometric literature. It is having an IQ over 145. By that definition, Elon Musk is a genius.
And so, that in the Romantic era, it was the kind of the poet, right? And then it flips at the end of the 19th century to being the innovator. Thomas Edison is the real exemplar of this. And if you look at Thomas Edison, what he did is very similar to Musk in some ways. So Thomas Edison had a couple of inventions that were absolute bangers, right? The phonograph, incredible. People, you can't imagine now how much people freak their nut. For the first time, you could hear the voice of somebody who was dead. That like no longer did speech and kind of linear time have to coincide. People thought it was like a ghost in the machine. It was just jaw dropping. So he like Elon Musk, he had a couple of undoubted successes. But he also had a laboratory, which was really important. Almost everything good was done by people in the laboratory, and maybe, and they had the logbook, so other people's names are on everything. He couldn't have done it without this huge team around.
It's really hard to get much done without the help of other people. So if you can work together with a group, right, this group strategy will typically outcompete the individualist strategy.
Around him. And then what happened is that after a couple of successes, he kind of just got moved up into a category of kind of like special sage.
No, genius isn't 125, Bob. It's 145. It's 3 standard deviations above the European normal.
That we want to hear from. So people would go to him. Journalists would go to him. They'd take the train line. He was also a very easy train line down from New York. So it's a bit like being on Twitter. Like, he was very available to journalists. And he would come and he would just weave some story about some amazing thing that he was going to do. And journalists got kudos from being the like Edison whisperer. And he got kudos because he was now, they called him the American Prometheus, right? He was the symbol of what America saw itself at the time, which was this incredibly innovative, white-hot heated technology country that was, not like boring old Europe, that was kind of forging onwards. And this symbiotic relationship developed where the more they puffed him up, the better it was for their careers and the better it was for their sales figures of their magazines. And as he became less and less...
So, yes, the news media builds people up and then it tears them down. All right, so Elon Musk has flaws. There are elements of the con man in Elon Musk. There are elements of a nasty, tough boss. There are parts of the fool in Elon Musk, and he also has a considerable body of achievement, and all these different characteristics will exist in one man.
Interesting as an inventor, he became more and more a sort of celebrity. And that's, I think, probably pretty.
So Elon Musk is getting on in age. He's not going to be doing as much innovative, cutting edge work. And as men get older, they have more and more of a psychological need for kudos. So until about age 40, men are typically just building their kingdom. Then their interests start to expand to their family, to their friends, to their community after age 40. And then if they've accomplished substantial things in their life as they move through their 50s and 60s, right, they want to receive respect and recognition. And this is the phase that Elon Musk is in. He's not going to be a cutting edge innovator anymore.
Pretty much, I would say, the trajectory that you can feel that Elon Musk has been on, right? As maybe he's got a second knack, maybe he will get to Mars. But so far, there have been an awful lot of, I'll build the Boring Company tunnel between wherever and wherever. It should have already happened by now. All these milestones that he's absolutely blown through, vaporware, as they call it, that is something that.
Right. I have a shocking insight about Elon Musk talking about us going to Mars. People do not necessarily mean what they say, and they do not necessarily say what they mean. So talking about a trip to Mars does not mean that it's your real empirical goal. It's just something that you talk about that gets you inspired. Right? People tell themselves and tell other people all sorts of things that are not true to get energy, to get inspiration, to feel like they're important. Most people, after they meet their basic survival needs, mostly want to feel important. And this thought of creating a mission to Mars makes Elon Musk feel important, gives him the energy to go through the day, doing some good things, doing some bad things, doing some mediocre things.
Has got great lineage all the way back to Edison as being what you want from these kind of big-brained inventor types, because they're just spinning, they're the kind of prophets of the future.
Like Tesla.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing that I enjoy about Tesla is actual original Tesla, Nikola Tesla, spent a bit of time in Edison's laboratory and then went, "Oh, I don't like you at all, mate. I'm back off to Europe. See ya." Just couldn't get on with him in the end.
Helen, did you cover Richard Feynman, in the book?
Oh no, only every so briefly, so often. But I think there's a very funny bit. I actually really liked the film Oppenheimer. I don't know how you felt about it, but one of the things I thought it did really well was it didn't try to pretend that Oppenheimer had made all of the discoveries himself. It was actually a rare kind of great man of history film that was actually about someone who's a really good manager, like a really good quartermaster almost, right? And actually, if you ever read any military history, you will find out that generals are really important, but the quartermaster is also extremely important, right? If the army does not turn up with any boots, or they will have to eat rotten horse meat and all die of dysentery, these are bad things. And so what I really liked about that is there's a very brief shot of Feynman just playing his bongos in the background. And I thought after all this kind of relentless puffery that we've had of Feynman as the current great man of science, that was it. He was just there just drumming away because he's one of 20 brilliant physicists in that, and subtract any one of them and does the Manhattan Project succeed? The Manhattan Project is a really good example of a kind of group genius, right? And this is what I argue in the book at the end, is that the Greeks had this idea of genius, that it was something that came to you, right? You were visited by a genius, like the muse of poetry spoke through you. And we should kind of get back to that idea rather than having the idea that there are special people and everything that they do is special. And one of the people you might have come across is William Shockley, the chemist, physicist, who won a Nobel Prize for his involvement in the transistor and then embarked on a very, very brisk career of scientific racism, obsession with IQ. And he was in that classic mold.
Can someone notice IQ differences between groups and not be obsessed with them? I don't think that noticing IQ differences has taken up most of Shockley's time.
Somebody who, he'd been really smart, but almost no one could work with him. And really the foundation of Silicon Valley dates back to all the people.
Oh, so he ceases to be smart when he notices group differences?
Who left his company because they hated him and went and founded their own companies. But he became obsessed with how special he was.
I feel like the alpha and the omega.
All right. A lot of people become obsessed with how special they are. That's not something that just happens to that rare person, right? Most people think of themselves as a pretty special snowflake, and it's an adaptive belief because it gives you the strength to carry on through difficult times.
Of this is though Isaac Newton has got to be the best example of that, right? Like such an insane person and was into some insane shit as well as being a super big deal.
Guess what? Creativity and being cutting edge, it correlates with some traits that are not just good, but also bad, right? All traits or tendencies correlate with things that are good and with things that are bad. So if you are particularly creative, you're probably particularly prone to certain mental illnesses like schizophrenia, where you read more into reality than's really there. Ashkenazi, high IQ, right? Correlates with a whole bunch of physical disabilities and illnesses and poor eyesight.
He seemed to have a personality that was even more obnoxious than Elon Musk.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting.
Well, sometimes a brusque personality is an assist in getting things done, right? Elon Musk has gotten a ton done. He is a man of substance in addition to being a flawed human being who says some stupid things.
The thing about him is that he did a lot of his best work when he was living in a Cambridge college, which is like somebody did his laundry, somebody provided all his meals. All he had to do was get up in the morning and be Isaac Newton. And that's a really underrated bit of the kind of thing. But you're right, he spent most of his life obsessed either with alchemy or biblical chronology.
Jordan.
Well, exactly.
And maybe it brought him joy, right? Maybe it was fascinating to him, right? Maybe going out there beyond what is considered legitimate knowledge drove him. And some of the manifestations of this personality tendency were historic and others didn't pan out.
Maybe Jordan at some point will come up with a discovery as amazing as gravity. And that's the only bit history will remember. And they'll never remember the bit about how dragons are real. Or be like, oh, is it funny when the guy who discovered gravity also thought dragons were real? Yeah, it can happen.
Did you notice, Helen, that Feynman thing? There was a YouTuber that did a long video essay about the kind of movement around him, the cult of personality that exists around him, but also around people like Newton and Musk and all those kind of things. And one of the depressing realizations I had also from conversation.
So I'm not a big fan of the cult of personality. Simply recognize that there are situations where some people succeed or where some people have extraordinary talents, and then those very same persons in different situations, in a different time, different era, facing different constraints, they're nothing special.
With you was like most of the people we cover, and that you covered on the New Gurus series, are like charlatans, right? Like they haven't actually done anything, but they have these like.
Most people are not either charlatans or people of substance, right? People who are in the news for the big brain concepts, they often have an element of charlatan in them and an element of substantive achievement and an element of the fool and an element of bravery, right? People are made up of all sorts of different sides. People usually don't just fall down into neat genius on one hand and charlatan on the other hand, right? These blokes are combinations. I'm thinking about Frederick Matthias Alexander, the creator of the terrific Alexander methods. He had all the qualities of the con man, but he also had the real deal. And sometimes he overstated and exaggerated the profundity of his insights and the effectiveness of his methods. But he still had something that was of great worth.
Puffed up personas and, kind of Weinsteinian characters. But then in this case, like with Feynman and with Newton and stuff, they did do things, right? Or there are plenty of Nobel Prize winners as well, but they seem to have the same puffed up narcissistic personality traits. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, there's probably quite a lot of narcissism that is required for a person to venture out where the buses don't run no more. Right, there's quite a bit of narcissism required for me to do what I'm doing right now. And there's a time and a place. And there are sometimes good reasons for tapping into your narcissistic side. Right, the narcissistic trait is usually not an essential quality of someone. It's just something that ebbs and flows depending on the situation and is probably required for all sorts of cutting edge adventurous work.
Oh no. Maybe like all like that.
You worry that Eric Weinstein's like theory of whatever it is, cosmological oneness, is actually going to turn out to be really good, and everyone's going to go, they didn't see it in his own time.
No, it's not that.
He's worried that this trait of narcissistic bullshittery is not diagnostic. Like they all seem to have it, both the people that really do things and people that don't.
Genius is at the middle of a Venn diagram between charismatic narcissist and has actually good ideas and achievements. And there are people who have really good ideas and achievements but don't relentlessly self-promote or turn themselves into an icon of the age in some way. And there are people who are just charismatic narcissists and never achieve.
So Elon Musk relentlessly self-promotes, and so he also then brings on himself well-deserved criticism. Right, smart, intelligent, thoughtful people feel inclined to take him down a few pegs because he does consistently exaggerate his own genius.
And occasionally what happens is those two things collide, and you get someone like a Picasso, who was both a very talented artist, incredibly technically talented artist, and made himself into a symbol of something at the particular time. My example right at the beginning of the book is the difference between Tim Berners-Lee and Elon Musk, right? And Tim Berners-Lee did more than anyone to create the modern internet, I think you could probably argue. But his children are called Ben and Emily, right? Elon Musk's children are called Techno Mechanicus, X#YZ, Exodoxidarial. And like
That's a good point. I mean, poor Elon's children, all right? He saddled them with awful names. Like this Mark Krikorian tweet. And Mark Krikorian is a famous immigration restrictionist. He notes, I don't like Elon's H-1B take either, but calm down. Number one, Elon helped Trump win. Number two, as he said on Saturday Night Live, I reinvented electric cars. I'm sending people to Mars on a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude? And there is some common ground between the tech right and immigration restrictionists. So perhaps we should not be too quick to push people out of the MAGA movement. Mickey Kaus responds, can I still trash Vivek Ramaswamy? He didn't reinvent electric cars. He brings to the table mainly his need for attention. He wants no numeric caps on immigration, and he pisses on concern about working class wages. So Vivek writes, the root cause of America's working class struggle is the federal government. Regulators hurt the people they're supposed to protect. Downsizing the federal bureaucracy won't just be a civic achievement, it will be an economic blessing for U.S. workers. Mickey, I'm all for downsizing the bureaucracies, but this seems like BS. Long-term trends have shifted the balance against the working class. One, by increasing returns to skill and education. Two, trade, unskilled labor is increasingly performed abroad. And immigration. Three, unskilled labor comes here. Maybe AI will confuse these trends, but removing bureaucratic impediments will not. So, yes, there are good arguments for shifting America in a more meritocratic direction where we're talking about our fellow Americans, right? Let's not replace our fellow Americans and drive down their wages by importing hundreds of thousands of foreigners. So New York Times has over 10 million subscribers. Wall Street Journal has 4.3 million subscribers, and the Free Press now has over 1 million. I've subscribed to the Free Press. Okay, Patrick Bet David. As an immigrant from Iran, I saw this as an edge. I don't mind working 80 hours a week. I don't mind the competition. All I wanted was a shot. This used to be the American way. Time to return to it. Readers add context. Patrick Bet David made his money by founding a predatory multi-level marketing pyramid scheme, which he then used to market himself as a business guru on YouTube. Last year, the top 30 H-1B visa employers laid off 85,000 people. At the same time, they sought 34,000 new H-1B foreign workers. This includes Tesla. Right, back to Helen Lewis.
Constantly goes on about how he's Iron Man and Tony Stark, right? And so there is this, what we tend to do is just take at face value people's constant assertion of who they are. And if they're charismatic, the fact that they have people following them. And that's what we call genius. It's not actually related to achievement. It's achievement plus cultishness, I guess.
Oh.
Well, I can't wait to read your book.
Well, in the psychometric literature, genius has a very precise definition, an IQ over 145.
Because it seems to be dealing with the theme that I've been thinking about so much, and it started from, online, there is this IQ, intelligence quotient, has this cultural currency, right? Which is now completely divorced from what it
measure,
what it actually is, the actual measure as it exists in psychological research. And
how is it divorced? Right, IQ correlates with length of life, productivity, job skills, income. Almost everything good that you want in life correlates with IQ.
Like, you see that people cannot differentiate between success and being rich, like in Elon Musk. For them, that is like high IQ. Like, high IQ manifests itself in being extraordinarily successful and high.
There is a modest correlation between IQ and making money. It's not a one-to-one correlation. There is a substantial, 0.3, 0.4 correlation between IQ and money. There's a modest correlation.
Social status. And I found it really interesting that the modern age has sort of reified this thing, and they sometimes call it IQ, intelligence, whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with any technical definition of it. But what it has everything to do with is high social status and being perceived as a success, mainly.
There is a mild correlation between high IQ and social status. It's not one-to-one.
Today, as in making a lot of money. And that is the proof that's in the pudding. Like, there's no way you could be rich and successful and not be a high IQ individual.
Not many people get rich and successful with a 90 IQ.
You are going to love. I fell right down the IQ rabbit hole because I agree with you. You spend any time online and you get the kind of Steve Saylors or Noah Carls or all of these people who are obsessed with a very early 20th century version of IQ, that it is essentially like a number.
Oh, so Steve Saylor and Noah Carl don't know anything about developments in intelligence testing. All right, Steve Saylor and Noah Carl know 100 times more about IQ than Helen Lewis. It's interesting. I've never heard the host of Decoding the Gurus, and I've never heard Helen Lewis talk about people like Steve Saylor without lying about them. So what does it say about people like Helen Lewis and Chris Kavanaugh and Matt Brown that they cannot discuss someone like Steve Saylor without lying about him? Steve Saylor writes about so many different topics, and to use obsessed as a put down, in that he is a respected writer about IQ by those who specialize in intelligence. And all they can do is lie about him.
But that floats over your head that sort of says how worthwhile you are as a human being.
What a horrible lie. I mean, what a horrible, horrible lie that Helen Lewis and the host of Decoding the Gurus consistently retail, that Steve Saylor, Noah Carl, and other people who take note of the obvious that different groups have different gifts and that IQ correlates with some good things in life. Never have people like Steve Saylor, Charles Murray, Noah Carl said that your IQ score equals your human worth. Right? What horrible character this reveals about Helen Lewis and the hosts of Decoding the Gurus. What bare-faced liars they are. Consistently, all they could do when they talk about someone like Steve Saylor is lie in the most disgusting ways possible.
Yes.
And you get very interesting.
Yes to the lie that Steve Saylor and Noah Carl and people like him correlate somebody's human worth with their IQ. They love that lie. They're all over that lie. They're creaming in their shorts over that lie. They promote that lie to their listeners, right? Every time they talk about Steve Saylor, Noah Carl, Charles Murray, people who notice psychometric testing results and group differences, their reaction is all they can do is lie and slander and slur and demean without ever coming to grips with what people like Steve Saylor actually say. They can never quote Steve Saylor. All they can do is lie about Steve Saylor.
Before that, like Charles Darwin writes a letter saying, I don't think I'm the most intelligent person in my family, which is really interesting, right? That he didn't think
And so Charles Darwin said, I don't think I'm the most intelligent person in my family. And so what? Right? He said that once. I've said things once or twice. So what? People utter all sorts of things. During the act of love, at times, I have cried out, Jesus Christ, and I did not have any belief that Jesus was the Christ when I did that. It was an involuntary reflex. So sometimes it's just a social nicety to play down your intelligence. So just because I think Richard Feynman and Gary Kasparov say they only have a modest IQ, doesn't mean that what they say about themselves is actually true. I got an insight for Helen Lewis. People do not always say what they mean. People do not always mean what they say. And yes, it's a nice quality to be modest about one's cognitive abilities, but it doesn't necessarily correlate 100% with truth.
I was a super brain, and therefore I came up with the evolution through natural selection.
It doesn't really matter that much whether or not Charles Darwin considers himself a super brain. It doesn't really matter that much whether Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy or Charles Murray or Luke Ford consider themselves super brains. But what matters are their net contributions to the extent that they optimize for truth and they try to push forward things that are true and good. It doesn't matter that much whether or not they anecdotally remark, I've got a super brain, I got a modest brain, I got a slightly above average brain. All right, this is like the Protestant Christian fixation with modesty. Modesty is nice at times. These modest remarks or lack thereof are not particularly important.
He thought of himself was as an empiricist, right? He was the guy who got on the Beagle and spent 3 years looking at finches' beaks. And actually having the tolerance for boredom and interest in small birds was actually ultimately more important than the kind of one great intuitive leap that he had to make to put that theory together. And so I go from Francis Galton, who's actually Darwin's cousin, and his idea about hereditary genius, which then leads to the IQ test.
So I noticed that good-looking parents tend to have good-looking children. Not always, not perfectly, but more often than not. Athletic parents tend to have athletic children. Musically gifted parents tend to have musically gifted children. Intelligent parents tend to have intelligent children. Criminally convicted parents tend to have children are more likely to get criminally convicted. Dumb parents increasingly have, or they disproportionately have dumb kids. Right? There are obvious family traits that pass on through generations,
which are developed in actually to help kids with what we now call sort of special needs get on at school, right? It's to find kids who are falling behind. It's not supposed to be about identifying special echelon of top people. And then I go through.
Maybe we should identify top people, all right? We as a society would be far more benefited if we put a little bit more money in helping out the geniuses in our midst, identifying them as children and allowing them to thrive, compared to the hundreds of billions of dollars that we spend on knuckleheads who never achieve very much.
Lewis Terman, whose genetic studies of the gifted, it's incredibly good, rich, longitudinal data about American life. But what it doesn't do is reliably identify geniuses. And
it does very reliably identify high achievers, right? These genius kids disproportionately turn out to have extraordinary lifetime achievements. It doesn't correlate perfectly, but Philip Tetlock and other individuals who have sought out and found extraordinarily gifted children, right? These extraordinarily gifted children have disproportionately contributed to society, and the more intelligent the child and the more intelligent the adult, the higher the level of contribution that they consistently make, right? There is no level of IQ at which you do not become more likely to contribute to society, where it just stops, right? Some idiots say, oh, after 120 IQ, it doesn't matter. Well, people with a 150 IQ are more likely to come up with inventions than people with a 140 IQ. And people with a 160 IQ are more likely to push society forward and to create and innovate than people with a 150 IQ.
He changes the name of it as it goes along to not be about genius, because he realizes that you can't find these people. You can't administer.
You can just give an IQ test, and if you got a kid who consistently scores at 145 and above in an IQ test, you have found a genius. Now, this genius may not go on to great accomplishment in adulthood, but they are far more likely to go on to great accomplishment in adulthood than people who test out consistently at a 100 IQ.
IQ tests to people at the age of 7 and kind of pick the winners like that. You'll find smart kids.
You can get a good hold on a kid's future possibilities by accurately testing their IQ. So someone who consistently tests around 100 is not going to graduate from college. Someone who consistently tests at 130 and above is not going to have difficulty if he wants to graduating from college. If he wants to become a doctor or a lawyer, right? He has the cognitive ability to do that.
That's right. By any standards, they did better than the average American. They had more degrees, higher paying jobs. They were healthier, all that kind of.
Oh, so when you identified bright kids, by every measure of the good life of which we are aware, they do far better than those who are not so bright.
The stuff. But one of the people that he misses, to go back to it, when he's administering these tests, who doesn't pass, is William Shockley. Does not make.
Oh my God. So this testing was not perfect. It's highly predictive, but imperfect. My God, let's just trash it if it's imperfect.
The cutoff to become a termite. His IQ as a kid is not. And he's one of the only people in that potential sample who wins a Nobel Prize. And so that's the kind of great irony that this is the guy who becomes obsessed with IQ and race in later life when he was and also ran.
Did you say he missed the cutoff to become a termite?
Yeah, you had to have Terman's termites. That's what they were called.
Okay, like
not like a little tiny crawly insect. No. It was in some ways a really.
All right, so the same host and the same Helen Lewis, right? They mock those who seek to tear down American institutions on the basis that this American institution made this mistake and that mistake. So they tear down that kind of extremist reaction to human imperfection, right? When it goes against their favorite institutions and their favorite politics. But when there is a development which is incredibly useful in identifying gifted children and encouraging them, and it is highly predictive of future success. But when it's not perfectly correlating, when they don't find William Shockley and identify him as a genius, then the whole thing is discredited.
Really brilliant piece of sociological research, in some ways a bad one, because Terman would also help his little termites get into good schools and stuff like that. And so there is a kind of, as ever with like any of these studies of the gifted or anything like grammar schools, you're putting your thumb on the scales really heavily. And there is a great deal of Hawthorne effect. You are changing the conditions of the experiment by observation and sometimes by.
There's no great thumb on the scale, right? People with a 130 IQ and above are capable and far more likely to accomplish certain things than those with an average IQ, right? These guys are just propagating lies and slurs, and they think that this is just a part of their commitment to truth.
Intervention. But yeah, and then I get onto, and this would be the thing I think maybe most interesting to what the stuff that you cover is I get onto the high IQ societies.
Mensa.
And I find the high IQ societies incredibly fascinating because having studied left-wing politics, prone to schisms, let me tell you, high IQ societies are the most schismy things you could ever have.
Yeah. So societies where people are heavily committed are much more prone to schism than low-intensity societies, right? Because a society is prone to schism, so what? There is not evidence that the higher someone's IQ, the more likely they are to be mentally ill or socially awkward, right? The evidence simply isn't there. Now, most smart people, I would assume, do not join Mensa because they are busy with other endeavors. And I would suspect that those high IQ people who do join Mensa are somewhat socially maladroit. Why don't they have anything better to devote themselves to? So yeah, I would expect that in groups like Mensa, you get a disproportionate amount of people who are socially maladroit.
Because by definition, and some of the more self-aware people within them write about the fact that if you're really smart and you've got a personality that you can get along with other people, you can succeed within conventional paradigms, right? You become a doctor, you become an architect, you become a physicist, whatever it might be. If you're really, really smart, but for some reason people don't like you, or you find it very hard to work with people or hard to hold down a job, those are the people who gravitate to the high IQ societies. So the high IQ societies end up being a kind of home for people who don't understand why they haven't got what they think they should have done. And that happens from the very earliest versions of them in the sort of like middle of the 20th century, is that they become, there's a terrible anecdote of someone who had to edit the I think it was the Mensa magazine, and just it drove them nuts because people would send in 9,000 word articles, refuse to be edited, and say, but I think I made actually a lot of really important points all the way through this, which from
yeah, I'm not shocked that people who don't have anything better to do turn out to be socially awkward. All right, what about decoding Elon Musk? This is from Decoding the Gurus, December 29, 2022.
Very hard, but Thunderfoot, for example, has produced several quite well-researched videos showing various lies that he's made. And it definitely does matter, because one thing that you'll note, and this is a limitation of our format, is that in the content, including this content that we look at in the moment, Elon Musk can come across quite well and actually like rather understated at times in his delivery, but he makes a variety of claims, and the issue is like you can't check those in real time, right? So you would need to.
So most people I've met who were part of Mensa were socially awkward, and they were not thriving in life, and they were not people that I wanted to hang out with. I'm sure there are probably some lovely people in the group, but usually those who've got a life don't spend time joining Mensa.
Go and do research. And there are people that you can, to a certain degree, trust that they're being relatively accurate when they represent things. And with Musk, I will say we knew that he has a penchant for exaggeration. So went to look into various claims and just discovered absolute mountains of lies, bald-faced lying. And he does it on Twitter every day. Now,
so Elon Musk can tell lies. Donald Trump tells a disproportionate number of lies, and they can also have redeeming qualities. It's not like someone tells a bunch of lies and then that's just who they are, therefore dismiss them.
For everyone to see, like he said, he's never going to ban the Elon Jet thing. That's his commitment to free speech. Banned, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just, that is important context, and it highlights that the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about now is a step. In some people, you can notice red flags and it should show up. But if there's a load of contextual information that says this person is a prolific liar and hyperbolic salesman, that is
true. Right? Elon Musk is a hyperbolic salesman, and he does say a lot of things that are not true, and much of his tweeting is reckless. This is part and parcel of a complicated person.
Is relevant information, and you should go and look secondary sources. You should go look for unbiased breakdowns, including looking at things that are positive about him, and try to get deeper into the story. So yeah, just to fully recommend that. But I think it is.
There's an excellent biography of Elon Musk that came out in the past year. Read that.
Because people could just watch a video of Musk's and say, well, his haters are a bit mean to him.
Yeah, that's right. So we won't try to give an overview of his career or the many businesses he's been involved with now, because that would take up too much time. But I will say that in getting one's head around what Musk is and what he does, it's a little bit more complex than simply someone who is a prolific engineer or a super creative person or whatever. It's not quite that, but it's also not quite someone like he's a complete scam artist, like someone who's created a new NFTs or Bitcoin. And that's because there are real businesses. There are
rockets.
There are real rockets. There is a real car. Whatever the failings of Tesla are, it is still a legitimate and a significant enterprise. But I guess what should be acknowledged is what Musk puts on top of those businesses is, as you said, a huge amount of spin. I've seen interesting discussion of his role in some very cold-blooded financial analyses. These are people that don't give a damn about Musk. They're not a hater or a fan, just care about like whether or not you should buy Tesla stock, for instance. And one of the things that they acknowledge while sort of shaking their heads at his antics
They made a point that I thought was very interesting because it's easy to sort of pathologize the behavior of someone like Musk, and it is somewhat pathological, just like Donald Trump's behavior is somewhat pathological. But there is a method to the madness, right? They described what he does is his job in the business can be thought of as being sure to put Tesla on the front pages, get it talked about in the media like all the time. Now, Tesla apparently spends next to nothing on actual advertising like brand development, which is very unusual for a brand-focused company like that. A company of Tesla's size would often spend like $1 billion on just building up the brand name and brand awareness. But Musk doing the performance that he does, very much like how Trump's antics would ensure that the focus was always on him, performs a very functional role for a business like that.
So we're going to go into a recent interview from November 2022 that he had with, I think, like a Tesla mega investor or whatever, which explains why he also like a millionaire in his own right or multimillionaire, a guy called Ron Barron, probably familiar for financial people, but not familiar for me at all. He's an old guy, but he constantly refers to we, Tesla, as a we, right? Indicating that he is in some way. I actually thought he was an employee of the company when I first heard it, but I now gather that he is like a large investor in it, which is why he talks like that. But you'll see that. But just before we start into the clips from that conversation, I have an example, Matt, that illustrates both Elon's role as a very good promoter who brings genuine value in adding attention and drama, media attention to the companies that he's in, and also the aspect that you cannot really trust what he claims, particularly when it comes to projections. So this is just a short.
Hey, in general, you should not trust pronouncements from anyone without context, without knowing the particular situation in which they are speaking. So yeah, don't trust the pronouncements of Elon Musk or Donald Trump or anyone else.
Video we're taking from somewhere else. It's about a minute long, which is why you'll hear background music. But the thing to note here is all of these statements are basically taking part in sequential years. So it starts out in 2017 or 2016 and continues on. So you will hear him making the same prediction, but each time it's made, it's another year or several months have passed.
Autonomous cars will definitely be a reality. A Tesla car next year will probably be 90% capable of autopilot. So 90% of your miles could be on auto. I mean, my guess for when we will have full autonomy is about 3 years. I think we're basically less than 2 years away from complete autonomy.
Probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving.
And we expect to have the first operating robotaxis next year.
I'm extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
When do you think Tesla will solve level 4 FSD?
I mean, it's looking quite likely that it will be next year. I would be shocked if we do not achieve full self-driving safer than a human this year. It's 7 years later. Still waiting.
I worked in construction for a few years. Guess what? People in construction lie all the time. People in Hollywood lie all the time. On the other hand, I would expect that there are parts of medicine where it's much more important to be precise. I would expect that there are parts of academia and there are some businesses where it's very important to be precise, but all sorts of industries and all sorts of leaders lie all the time for reasons that seem to work in that particular situation. And then other people are incentivized to try to be as precise as possible.
So yeah, it helps if you have the visuals, but each of those statements, as I say, is taking place at different years. So when he's saying it's going to happen in 2 years, 2 years later, he's saying it's definitely coming next year and so on. So you can do that. People do that, but he does it in a way which is quite remarkable. It's quite remarkable that when he says he's going to have Neuralink brain interfaces in the next 12 months, he still gets headlines saying Elon Musk says Neuralink available for everyone in the next 12 months, or entering human trials in 6 months' time, or mission to Mars in 2 years, says Elon Musk. And you're like, wow, but he's been saying those kind of things.
So when men and women are dating, right, they often exaggerate their own qualities, right? Men will often be more generous and more empathic than they naturally are. Women will pretend to take great interest in the things that the man is interested in. And then as soon as they get married, the blowjobs stop. She stops pretending to have an interest in tennis, right? And people revert to form. So certain situations incentivize people to exaggerate and tell lies. Then when the situation changes, right, their behavior will change.
Ever since he got near a microphone.
Yeah. These aren't isolated incidents of him both making really hyperbolic claims about the amazing products that are going to arrive very, very shortly, and also him being instrumental in making them happen. So there's the example of the solar city and the electricity generating solar tile. He was up there on stage, wasn't he, Chris, where he was holding this thing in his hand. And he was claiming that they were already making these tiles that they could cover the rooftops
Slate
with.
tiles of the roof, so like it would.
Have you ever been on a job interview where they typically ask you, why do you want to work at McDonald's or Hewlett Packard or General Motors or Bob's Diner? And in America, this seems to be a very common thing. I don't think they do it as much in Australia. And you have to pretend to have all sorts of enthusiasm and interest and admiration for the business when you simply want a job and a paycheck. And then when you get the job, right, you are then expected, if you want to thrive at that particular company, to be all in on the company vision. And if you're not all in on the company vision, and if you're hanging out with people who are not all in on the company vision, right, you are less likely to succeed at that company. So people tell lies because they're strongly incentivized to tell lies.
Would look just like a normal roof, but it would be solar generating. And they actually claimed the houses in the place where they were doing the presentation, but that turned out to be a set from Desperate Housewives. And also that he just completely changed the design of the product in the few months before. So like none of it was ready to go. But he was on stage claiming it's already there and installed and all good.
And the solar tile that he was actually holding in his hand.
Yeah, I believe it came out in the court case that was not a functional tile. It was so standing on stage saying this is actually one of them, and like no, it isn't. So, and he knew that.
Yeah, and this is someone who claims to be.
And when employers ask you, "Oh, what are your biggest weaknesses?" right? Probably not a great idea in your own best interest to tell them the complete unvarnished truth, right? A normal person will prepare for that sort of question and have something that touches on some elements of truth, but still puts himself in the best light, right? A successful job interviewee will have a narrative that will not be false, but will not necessarily disclose everything. And your employer is not going to tell you everything about your new job and how difficult and demanding they can be. And most employees don't work out. Most relationships don't work out. Right? Most businesses don't work out. Right? We are all bouncing from failure to failure, and then we get on a good track for a while, and then some other part of our life fails, and we get thrown into some brand new circumstance where we have to evolve a whole new set of skills.
Intimately familiar with all of the engineering details. He presents himself as an engineer, if not instrumental in actually making a lot of these technological advancements happen. So you can't really claim ignorance in that scenario, right? Like, I'm just a sales guy. I don't know what they're doing in the back room. That's not the role that he projects.
I have a clip.
So the longtime news media reporter at the LA Times did a week-long series on Hollywood, and the first entry was, "In Hollywood, everybody lies." Right? You don't want to go around saying negative things about other people in Hollywood. That's not good for your career because there is so much volatility in Hollywood. So the secretary one day can become the producer the next day. And so people are nice to everyone. They put up a false front of niceness because that is the most adaptive strategy to go through that particular industry.
Clip that speaks to that specifically. So this is Elon talking about the role that he plays in Tesla manufacturing.
And then another example was there was again, this was like these were choke points in the entire production system. That's why they, I'm running around the production line trying to fix the production line, just like a maniac, sort of Tasmanian devil, just running around the factory like a lunatic. Let's see, we had the body production line, a Model 3 was at one point stuck because we had a laser welding cell to weld a small cross-car beam in the passenger footwell of the front seats. And I'm looking at this beam, and I'm like, what the heck does that do? Because the entire factory stopped trying to get this laser weld cell to work. And I'm like, I can't imagine what a useful thing it could do. And then the production team said, oh, that's for crash safety. So then I called the crash safety team and said, is this for crash safety? They said, oh, no, that didn't do anything. We should delete it. That turned out to be totally useless, but they forgot to tell the production team. Honestly, a bunch of these things just feel like...
So Elon Musk bought Twitter, apparently fired 80% of its workers, and my experience of Twitter is far better than before he bought it. So sometimes Elon Musk has some pretty good insights.
You're living in a Dilbert cartoon. Like, oh no, what's our? I mean, any given company, they should have like, what's your Dilbert ratio? Okay, it's not 0.
And even that image that he conjures up there, it's the fact that he presents himself like he's the foreman on the factory, right? And there's, it's running around building and smoke is billowing out somewhere, and he's like, oh, what?
Yeah, most people tell stories that are quite flattering to themselves. So let's get Dooovid back onto the show. Dooovid, you mentioned that you've got some insights into Elon Musk. What did you want to share about Elon?
Well, I read Isaacson's biography. I've actually read 3 biographies on Elon Musk now. I followed a little bit like the technology. I'm an engineer, and you go to some of the shows and auto shows or things in Detroit. But I think my biggest insight has been from talking to my dad and selling science fiction books, because I think Elon Musk is actually influenced by science fiction. I think that's the biggest influence on him. And my dad is not a big Elon Musk fan, but I mean, he loves science fiction and these old stories. And if you hear Elon Musk, kind of like my father's father, where when he would talk to Jews, he would talk about Isaac Asimov. And because he loved Isaac Asimov, and he probably had a little streak of philo-Semitism, possibly due to how much he liked Isaac Asimov. And I'm not sure if you know that type personality, maybe Seventh-day Adventist, or your father wasn't that type, but my father, my grandfather, they love science fiction. And so I'm working with my dad in my business. Probably over half the books I sell are science fiction. From what I've heard about Elon Musk in his speeches, one thing he always says, Douglas Adams is the biggest influence on him. And like I said, when he speaks to Jewish groups, he usually throws out the name Isaac Asimov, kind of probably as Isaac Asimov's obviously one of the, greatest, most influential Jews to ever live, at least according to the personality type of Elon Musk.
And any other takeaways that you got from, you said you read 3 biographies of Elon Musk. So what I took away from the Walter Isaacson biography is he's a complicated guy, not necessarily pleasant to work with, not necessarily pleasant to have in your life, but someone who has a ruthlessness that can be valuable to get very difficult projects accomplished. But he certainly has a large self-destructive side. He has a foolish side. He is volatile. He is often carelessly cruel. and he also has put together some startling achievements. So complicated guy with considerable accomplishments on his track record. What did you take away from what you read about Elon?
Yeah, I guess it was his first ex-wife that talked about demon mode, or maybe it was a different ex-wife that said the demon mode. And Isaacson, kind of his Freudian analysis of trying everything not to be like his father, but basically ending up like his father anyways. And maybe that's accurate. I kind of had sympathy for. I mean, I could see Elon Musk's father probably did a few bad things, but like I actually came out kind of liking Elon Musk's father from reading it, even though that's not the way Isaacson portrays it, and would probably say like Elon Musk's father is probably the biggest influence that made him the way he is. Um, I remember on Stephen James when we streamed when Elon Musk went to Auschwitz, and I actually was on with Adam Green when Elon Musk had the phone call with the elders of Zion, with like Ben Shapiro and the president of Israel and all these other people, and I was trying to explain a different streak of philo-Semitism, which might be kind of like you, that you're saying like Jews have a certain personality type, and it could be off-putting or unpleasant to some people, but some people like that, and maybe you say like you fit in with Jews because you like that like strong culture of critique, verbal criticism, competitive spirit. But there's another element I thought where a lot of businessmen, non-Jews, like talking about money, and he's saying like there's a big taboo, especially among Anglos, Europeans, against talking about money. You're just not supposed to talk about money. However, not all Jews, but there's an element of Jews that like we're very comfortable talking about money. Like that's all we do. And especially in terms of scheming how to make money. Because like I definitely had Jewish friends or periods of time where all I did was, uh, like my roommates, my Jewish roommates, my business partners, and all we did was talk about like how to make money. And I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk fell into like a Jewish group. It's not always Orthodox Jews. Sometimes it's even secular Jews. They just have like I don't know if you're agreeing with me, but like
No, I
kind of
agree completely because I know I spend my time thinking about things I want to talk about on the show. I spend very little time thinking about making money.
But I'm saying like probably like your father, your Gentile experience, it just like you can't do that. You can't just talk about money. You can't just talk about how you plan to make money.
Right.
And it's almost like you're like you don't ask him, like you don't ask a man how much. It just like it would be improper. It would be almost unheard of to do such a thing. And so it's like a Jewish stereotype. And I was telling kind of like Stephen James, God forbid, like the dumb goy, in saying like that's actually a good thing to talk about money. Like it's just dumb. That's why like Gentiles are. That's why like goyim are poor and fall behind is because like this taboo they have against talking against money. So I don't have strong evidence, and it's not mentioned in his biographies, but you could tell from like Elon Musk's business angle, he is probably the type personality that could just talk about money, and he probably fell in at some point with a crew of Jews where he was kind of like like I mentioned Elliot Blatt. He's never in his life been part of a group of friends or clique of all Jews. But he probably fell in with a clique where it was majority Jews and they just talked about money. And he probably saw like it's just a dumb taboo of his father of Gentile society to not talk about money. And he maybe honestly became philo-Semitic. And because I day traded and did certain financial jobs or lived in New York, I also knew these like Gentiles that were like the lone or few Gentiles among a Jewish clique of businessmen. And a lot of these Gentiles just like love talking about money. And through that, they kind of loved hanging around Jews because Jews don't have these inhibitions to talk about these things. And you might not be a money guy, but it's similar. Like the Jews don't have these inhibitions that most Gentiles have that made you kind of feel comfortable and kind of just like it's just dumb that goyim don't talk about this stuff. Jews are probably right not to have these inhibitions.
Right, because what's going to happen? Where's your mind going to go Is it going to go towards having sex with people you don't know? Is it going to go to sports? I mean, you only have so much time, and how do you direct your thinking? Thinking about making money is probably one of the healthiest things that you can do. Let's bring Mike onto the show. Mike, have you heard anything that you want to comment on?
Hey, how's everything going?
Good, man.
Dooovid,
Good to see you again.
How are you?
Good.
I saw you over on the Machine Lives the other night. It was
Well,
just funny.
blessings. Good to meet you, Mike. Happy Hanukkah.
All right. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It was just the story you were telling reminded me of my dad worked for Honeywell Space and Strategic Avionics Division years ago. I think it might have been the 70s or the 80s. And they said, well, there was an Israeli general coming over and, looking at buying some planes or some of their technology or whatever. And of course, all the white guys are like, do we have any Jews around? Like there's one Goldberg guy or something in this one division. It's like, well, we better bring him along for the meeting. And so at the meeting, the Jewish guy's arguing with the general. He's like confronting him and they come out of the meeting and, the WASP guys go over and they're like, what are you doing? That's our customer, And he's like, no, he loved it. Us Jews, we love to argue with each other. We love to debate each other, just like a whole different cultural aspect. You were saying like,
different groups have different personalities, different cultures. Right. I forgot which of the cultures or personality types that you feel most at ease with, Mike.
Well, I'm just a regular white American guy.
But I mean, you can be a regular white American guy and feel, very at home with traditional Asian culture or with brash Jewish culture, or what's the type of culture that you feel most at ease with?
Yeah, I think I'm a chameleon to some degree. I think I can get along with anybody.
And do you have a point of view on Elon Musk?
I'm undecided on Elon. I know a lot of people love him and stuff. Other guys are like, oh, well, look at his flamethrower thing. He's just a charlatan. He's like P.T. Barnum or something. He's just smoking.
Are you a science fiction reader?
No, I'm not a big science fiction.
Did you have a thought on what I said, Luke, about the type personality that is largely influenced by science fiction? Or like, like I went to a school where there were a lot of people that just loved Douglas Adams and they developed their worldview and philosophy around Douglas Adams.
Mike, do you have experience with people who like science fiction?
Yeah, I have a nephew who's huge into it and stuff. But he's kind of geeky. He's almost like Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. I don't even know who Douglas Adams is, so that's how.
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I haven't read that book. Have you read that, Luke?
I have not read it. I don't like science fiction, so I check out of that scene.
I mean, you're familiar that Elon Musk says that his biggest influence in life is Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he says really it's a philosophy book as science fiction. And I haven't actually read that book, but I know multiple people that agree with Elon Musk that that's the most influential book that they've ever read, and somewhat devised their worldview based on that book.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sure it does for some people, but Mike, so I think you agree with me that it's a dumb idea to put people on the pedestal, and it's probably an equally dumb idea to put highly accomplished people like Elon in the trash heap as well. That people are a mixed bag. Elon Musk is a mixed bag. He says a lot of crazy things, and he says some smart things, and he does some terrible things, and he does some great things. Do you want to elaborate, Mike?
Sure, absolutely. You can't throw someone in the trash heap, like you say, because they say a few crazy things, and you can't prop them up because they say a few good things, because they might say a few crazy things too. Elon, I guess he's done some pretty good things. Again, I put in the chat, I didn't realize he didn't found Tesla. He like bought into it. SpaceX, he's obviously putting up a lot of satellites. I'm in Florida. I was over on the Space Coast a couple of years ago. If those Falcon 9s were going up constantly, I could see them off US 1. So, I mean, just like Bezos, created Amazon and changed the world, whether it's for the better or for the worse, that's yet to be seen. But
well, I would
I
say
think,
that Jeff Bezos' contributions overall have been highly impressive. I mean, I love Amazon. It's just fantastic customer service, very reliable, pretty efficient. But Mike, you joined the show. Were there some points that you wanted to make?
I just wanted to tell Dooovid my story about my dad with the Jewish guy there.
Oh, right. Got it.
I didn't really have too much to say after that. You guys are.
Tell me again, what's your work experience? What field is it in, Mike?
I started out delivering mail. Then I worked as a data center design guy. And then I worked for a friend of mine and we imported flooring. So I've been all over the spectrum.
Okay, and it says in your screen name, atheist. So how important is atheism to you and to your identity?
Not important at all. That's just on because I usually troll Muslim sites.
Okay, and why do you troll Muslim sites?
I find it entertaining.
Okay, what? Tell me more. What's entertaining? Do you think of Islam as a low IQ religion?
Well, I think it's like all religions. I think it's probably level IQ with all other religions. I just, I've read the Quran. I've read many hadiths. So Muslims often think anybody who doesn't subscribe to Islam must be ignorant and unknowledgeable about their religion. So I find it interesting to ding at them with some of their stuff.
Is there a Muslim country that you would like to live in?
No, I like living in America. I think there are Muslim countries that would probably be tolerable. Morocco seems to be fairly liberal as Muslims go. Indonesia is considered pretty tolerant, although there have been several very strange blasphemy cases that have come out of Indonesia lately. They threw one woman in jail for asking if the mosque could turn their loudspeaker down. They found that blasphemous, but they don't eat pork, they don't allow alcohol, and they don't want interest. So all those things I disagree with.
So would you like to restrict immigration into the United States, Mike?
I'm all for legal immigration. I think we probably need more, H1N1 visas, more computer guys, probably out of India, maybe even Pakistan. I think America does a pretty good job of assimilating people. I don't think we're in any danger of being overrun by Islamists. I think the Europeans have a much worse problem. The Brits and the Dutch and the Germans. Of course, also it's the percentage of their population. When you take in 1 million Syrians into Germany, that's a larger percentage than, what is Germany? 80 million people. America's 330 million. So
do you have a different personality online? I mean, I wonder, do you troll people very much in real life, or do you develop a different personality when you go into these Muslim chat rooms?
No, I'm the same. I just actually went to a mosque up the road there to talk to the imam, and I ask him the same questions I do online.
And how did that go?
Well, it was a Friday before his khutbah, his sermon and stuff. So he kind of ran away a little bit. So I'm going to go back because he actually said he's a mufti, so he's an actual scholar. So I'm going to go back on a non-Friday.
And how does that feed you? Like, I love trolling people too, so I understand that because so many people are just stupid. But how would you describe the pleasure that you get from trolling?
Yeah, it's just, not to sound uppity, I think it's just intellectual curiosity. It's interesting to see people's views. I'm all for freedom of religion, freedom of speech. So I have no animus towards them for holding their views, but there's a lot of hypocrisy within Islam, obviously, with the dawah, the death to apostates. They have to be allowed to spread their religion, but if you try to spread a different religion within their states, they're allowed to kill you. It's like, well, that seems a little insane.
Dooovid, anything you've heard in the last 10 minutes that you want to comment on?
Yeah, I think me and you are probably in complete agreement, although you express it in terms of different groups have different strengths and weaknesses, as where I usually would express it as a strategy. But no, I mean, there's just a different strategy that may or may not work together with your group strategy. Has certain different points. Like generally, I have a positive view towards everybody, including Islam, and just recognize, like any other group, the strengths and weaknesses, and try to put it together as a general strategy. Just understand it, and saying like, well, it works for them. That's why that's how it evolved or came to be. Just like Judaism, there's certain aspects that could be off-putting or beneficial, but it's largely a cohesive strategy that works for its adherents.
And Dooovid, what was your reaction to the MAGA crowd splitting and going to war with each other over H-1B visas?
Yeah, I think that's the most important because from all these arguments I've had about immigration, if you're worried about the character of the United States, it's probably the most important to keep out the intelligent, high-level immigrants. And so I've heard that argument. I mean, maybe Richard Spencer has put it forward, but other type people that care about the European character of that. So like I look at that and say, yeah, if you're worried about the historical, ethnic, or even philosophical, cultural take of America, it's the most important to restrict the most intelligent immigrants, not the least intelligent. And especially like if you're going to have fairness, like the intelligent immigrants are going to come here and they're going to take over. They're going to be wealthy, and then they're going to use their wealth to change the direction of America. And that's already happened. Like relatively, it happened somewhat first with Jews, or maybe even other groups, but now it's happening across the board, and there's going to be substantially higher consequences of intelligent high-level immigrants than low-level. I mean, the low-level immigrants, they might cause crime or more visible problems, but the more intelligent immigrants are going to change the nature of America. And it also goes with kind of my view, like Elon Musk, that America's kind of been defunct for decades, and it's basically on support by the corporations. That the political system's basically bought and ran by the corporations, and you could argue Jews have a disproportionate element of control within wealth and corporations, and they need the immigrants to keep America running, and then you have the benefit of empire. The question that I pose in a lot of my arguments, even the first time, like the Brundlecast, like America as an empire, and America isolationism of just having a nation where people have certain freedoms or a way of life versus the empire. And if you want the empire, you have to make some extreme concessions. But I mean, so I almost completely I'm not that political, like, because I'm a multicultural immigration, but I largely completely disagreed with your sentiment, Luke, about like the compromise is just taking the intelligent or good immigrants. And I think if you're worried about keeping the character of America, then those are actually the most dangerous immigrants.
Hey, Kip, you just joined. Anything that you want to contribute?
Oh, just gonna say hi to you, hi to Big D, and hi to Mr. Mike Malzahn.
Happy Hanukkah, Kip. Pleasure to finally meet.
Right back at you. You too. I was gonna say, hey Mike, I was gonna say, Luke's the show times. He's been bobbing and weaving. I I call that a rope-a-dope style. He reminds me of Muhammad Ali, the way the Showtime moves around. But I'll catch on eventually, Luke.
Okay, so indicate to me somehow when you've got something you want to contribute. But Mike, do you want less immigration, more immigration, the same amount of immigration, different types of immigration?
It was an interesting point that Dooovid made. Yes, if the highly intelligent of very different cultures come over, they may sway our culture to their culture, as opposed to the ditch diggers. But again, I have a lot of confidence in America. I have a lot of confidence in our Constitution and our melting pot, as we used to call it. Nowadays, they say it's a mosaic, But I think we do a great job of integrating and assimilating our immigrants, and within a generation or two, very Americanizing them. If they're religious fanatics, that could be a little more difficult.
What does Americanism mean to you?
I'm sorry, what was
just
that?
the Constitution. I tend to, like, even Lucas Gage or people say America's basically just an economic zone, and Americanization basically just means somewhat like free markets or the capitalistic system. Everything else is largely fallen apart, and especially like teaching kids. I was hearing, I watched this guy Rick Beato, a music analyst teacher, but he was mentioning like that Mr. Beast. Someone mentioned Prince, and Mr. Beast was like, "I never heard who's Prince. I never heard of him." But even these cultural markers, Luke was talking about it this week, like the delocalization of media, entertainment, narrowcasting. There really is no dominant culture, no name brand that everybody knows anymore. And even like the Constitution, most people haven't read classics of America. So it's like, what is America anymore? It's just an economic zone.
Well, that's true. Our main power is our economics, our God money, if you will. And I do think most immigrants buy into that, and they come here literally for a better life, that we have economic freedom and we can build wealth within a generation or two. Again, that's why religious fanatics scare me a little bit, because they put their God above their own life. As the Muslims say, we love death more than you love life sometimes.
But what about people who put alcohol above their own well-being? Do they scare you too?
Sure. You got to watch out for the crazy drunks. I'm a not so crazy drunk myself. But yeah, if people are just out of control drunk all the time, they can be a danger. Drug addicts are certainly a danger to society. We have too many of them pulling us down. I'm not really sure when or why the Republicans all of a sudden switched to being on the side of the fentanyl addicts, as opposed to, when it was crack back in the 80s. It was like, well, if you're dumb enough to smoke that much crack, you should die. Now,
when did oh, okay, I get your point. And how many alcoholic drinks do you have a week, Mike?
Usually it's just Friday and Saturday night. I would say, I don't know, 6 on Friday and 10 on Saturday.
Wow. You really get toasty.
Yeah. No, I'm a fairly heavy drinker.
And you don't drink at all Sunday to Thursday?
Not generally.
And what's the payoff for having 6 to 10 drinks? What does it do for you?
Well, I just get drunk and I sleep better.
And you get drunk on your own? You go to a bar? Do it as part of a social interaction?
Luke, your mic is fading or something.
Mike, did you hear my question?
I heard your question. Yeah. Usually on my own. Did you hear mine?
Yeah, I said what is it? It helps you sleep. But there's got to be more to it than that. There are 5 nights a week where how are you getting to sleep the rest of the time?
No, I just lie in bed until I fall asleep.
That's when the hell begins. For me.
Was
No,
it a false
there's
escape
no
to
hell
worry
about
about
it.
Muslims? I mean, like,
Look,
why worry so much about Muslims? I
Oh,
think
I'm not worried about Muslims. Like I said, I'm nestled in the bosom of America. I'm not worried about such things. I just find it interesting to I went ahead and I bothered to read the Quran, and it's an arduous read. I've read many hadiths, so maybe some of it's just I like to throw what knowledge I have of Islam around. The Muslims like to think, oh, you don't know anything, blah blah blah, and then I can quote some of the Quran. I can throw some hadiths at them. I know who Ibn Taymiyyah was. I just came across a quote the other day from Ibn Khalduh. He's a Tunisian, lived in the time of the Caliphate of Timur, when Timur sacked Damascus. But anyways, he has a quote. He says, under Islam, it's obliged to bring all nations under our power, something like that. So I don't know if you, Dooovid, if you ever read the book of Jihad by Ibn Nuhas.
Yeah, I've read quite a bit. I'm familiar. I still take a neutral to positive view on Islam, and I mean, definitely there's cultural conflict, but I say just saying that could interest you, or you could play chess, or you could talk about making money and be entrepreneurial or something. But I mean, what draws you to be interested in Islam? And it appears you're taking a negative view towards it, so you're interested in something that you view as negative. So I mean, one thing, like I like Hinduism and I participate in Hinduism. I view it positively. I incorporated aspects of it into my life. But you appear to take a negative, you're take a negative stance towards Islam, and yet still devote your time and study to a topic you take a negative view towards.
Right. Well, you can't say a movie's bad unless you actually watch the movie.
Yeah, I mean, most people. I mean, you could, if you have the personality type that you'd rather watch a bad movie and critique it than watch a movie that you enjoy.
Well, I've already watched it. I can't unwatch it.
So Mike, you think Islam is one of the top 3 threats to the United States?
No, debt is our number one threat. Debt is our top 3 threats, but location, debt. But no, Islam is probably not in the top 10 threats to America.
Okay, so how is debt a threat to the United States?
Well, at some point, people aren't going to take our money anymore. Although I guess the BRICS are somewhat driven by Saudi Arabia, and I don't know if you guys have ever come across the Middle Nation YouTube channel. The guy out of Colorado. He talks about supplanting the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. The Chinese, BRICS, obviously, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then Saudi Arabia has joined them. I think Brazil's to be. I think maybe the UAE's in there. They're trying to create a new reserve currency to supplant the petrodollar. If oil is no longer traded in dollars, that's going to have a huge impact on our ability to print money.
And people have been talking about this for 70 years, Mike, and it hasn't happened yet. So do you think something's changed?
I think social media has changed the landscape to some degree. I do think there's a new ability to operate outside of the UN and outside of the EU. Brexit, the Brits breaking off from the EU. I think there can be a rise of the global South to threaten us at this point.
How on earth could the global South threaten us? I can't even conceive of any. If the entire global South disappeared tomorrow, the United States would not be much affected. How on earth can the global South affect us?
Well, again,
immigration.
If they stop accepting the American dollar.
Okay, let's say the entire global South stops accepting the American dollar. So Brazil, Argentina, Australia, South Africa, and the other parts of Southern Africa stop accepting the American dollar. What do you think would happen? It's the global South is pretty puny in economic and military terms. I don't see why we should be worried about the
Well,
global south. I mean, they're heavily dependent on us, not the other way around.
right. Well, I mean, I'm putting India and China in the global south as well. I know they're not geographically to the south, but China is the second largest economy in the world, maybe even the first. India is a huge economy. Southeast Asia, aren't necessarily huge economies, but they do have a lot of people, and they're decent sized economies.
So you think Indonesia might invade the United States?
No, I'm not talking military at all.
Do you think Indonesia
China,
might deploy its mighty economy against us?
they could stop accepting our dollars and drive inflation up and drive the dollar down. Along with, they would have to be paired with a bunch of other people, though. Yes, Indonesia by itself isn't going to do it. Even China by itself probably can't do it. China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, you take the whole Southeast, Pakistan, you take all of Africa, you take all the Middle East, the Gulf states. If they stop accepting dollars for their oil, there could be all sorts of catastrophic repercussions from that.
So
I wouldn't agree with that, but I would say they affect us through the brain drain and immigration. So like the country itself doesn't actually affect us, but the fact that their countries aren't doing that well causes them to come here, and on both levels, one, the lower level immigration, where it's an economic drain when they come here and can't be self-supported or get on the welfare system or commit crime. And then also when the smartest people leave the country to come here to excel, that also has a certain implication. But I tend to agree with Luke that the countries themselves, their foreign policy, besides for encouraging immigration to America, doesn't really affect us. But I see it as largely zero sum, where it's basically preserving the character of America or retaining the empire status. And you could try to do a little bit of both, but I think they're largely contradictory. What it takes for America to be an empire and what it takes to preserve the character of America are different. And I think we're going to go for empire. That and maybe someone like Luke, you want to have the best of both worlds, where you think you could preserve the empire status and the character of America at the same time. But I don't think that's possible.
I don't really care about empire. I'm just America first, whatever's best for the United States of America. I don't think we need to be an empire to further our own self-interest. So, Dooovid, what are your top 5, top 3, top 10 worries about the United States?
I would probably put environmental things in the top 3. Not just global warming, but like water pollution, resource extraction, and then probably economic, like the debt, wealth inequality, various failures of our economic system. You maybe call it the petrodollar, but you put the economic factors, and then 3, I'd say the culture wars. We're just we're losing unity among what it means to be American, and there's countless issues. If it's abortion, woke, LGBT, immigration, multiculturalism, religion, any of these things are just eating away at the maintaining, because America is such a vast territory, and it's tending to have more and more different people with different ways of life, different directions they want to pull the country. So it'll say like that could pull apart America, economic decline. But I think objectively, like probably our damage to the environment has to be up there.
Okay. And Mike, what when you put your head down and you're trying to sleep and you can't sleep, what do you worry about?
Oh, I don't worry much. I have a good life.
So what do you think about? You're trying to sleep, you can't sleep, right? You mentioned you have a hard time sleeping. So what are you thinking about when you're just lying there wishing you could sleep?
Oh, it depends on the night. Just things run through my head. I'm getting old. I got to get up and pee 3-4 times a night. It's not worries about the world crashing down on me or anything like that. I'm not a Pollyanna. I think America will be fine, certainly for the rest of my lifetime. In fact, I just gave my dad a book, The End of America. I forget what the title is, but it's apparently since our founding, the Europeans said, our deer were too small. We couldn't make it. Dooovid talked about resources. I think we have lots of resources still in America. We still have plenty of oil up in Anwar. And I don't know if you saw, I think some mining guy bought some land in Montana or Wyoming or something, and they think there's a huge rare earth metals stash under it, 5 trillion worth. Of course, if you flood the market with them, they won't be worth as much as you think. But yeah, we can always go to Fortress America, and we can always, even if our dollar collapses, if we just wave all our debt off and just go back to, not importing, not exporting. We are big enough, like Dooovid said, we're a huge nation. We're big enough that we can build all our own stuff. We have plenty of water. We have lots of rivers. We're in a lot better shape than a lot of other countries.
But we don't really own ourselves in the sense, like the foreign debt or even like real estate businesses. I'm not sure the exact number, but I think at least like 25% of America is foreign owned. And it'd be extremely difficult to extract that. And if America does have problems, just like, okay, like your ownership stake in America has been canceled. And really for like 40, 50 years now, that's been economic, like the reason real estate prices keep on going up and, businesses or the stock market is because the world wealthy people invest in America. And like, so the boomers retain their wealth, but they can't retain their wealth by passing on or selling their assets to Americans. They could only retain their wealth by passing on and selling their assets to wealthy foreigners. And it's probably already reached the brink of no turning back, but I think it's getting worse like that. You think like Elon Musk, or I was thinking like Brett Stevens, the Mexican Jewish immigrant. And now he's like, what it means to be American, why America should do this. And Elon Musk is the immigrant, or all these Indians. They're running our country for various reasons, largely because of what Luke Ford wants to do. At least his agreement politically, he wants to keep on bringing intelligent foreigners into America, and then they end up running our country, and they have to have a more globalist view of America. And at this point, like, it is no longer a we. Like like Elon Musk owns like more wealth than like the bottom 50% of all of America. Like, so people like the we own America. Like you don't own America. Like America's owned by individuals, and a lot of these individuals are foreign born and have globalist interests.
Well, I'd be fine with a complete end to immigration, but if we had to reach a compromise, I would be fine with just reducing immigration to, say, 10,000 people a year. So that would be about 1% of the current rate of immigration. So whether it's 0 or 1% of the current rate of immigration, I'm for completely crushing the immigration level. But if we are going to take a tiny number of immigrants, I would want them to be of the highest quality possible. I'm going to move on. Dooovid, any final words for this evening?
Yeah, happy Hanukkah. Like, I went and I helped out the Chabad local menorah lighting and saw some faces I hadn't seen for a while. And you put in perspective, like I said, like, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with what I said, especially how things I say about Judaism. Like, words are just words. And at the end of the day, they don't mean necessarily that much. Like the spirit of Hanukkah, seeing family, people getting together was relatively pleasant. So, sixth night of the Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah, Luke, blessings, New Year coming up. Glad to see you streaming and having guests on again.
Okay, thanks, Dooovid. Mike, any final words from you for this evening?
No, not really. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
You always have thought-provoking questions. I appreciate it.
Okay, and I'll talk to you another time then.
Everyone have a good one.
Take care. Okay, Kip, have you developed some thoughts?
Yeah, I have. I was going to say, Dooovid sort of touched on it, and you had touched on it earlier, that underclass that we have. If you think about it, the morality of the underclass, that it spread. it's sort of permeated more, kind of morphed into the primary culture. And look around, Luke, it is the source of the primary culture. Even Snoop Dogg and former rappers and all this kind of stuff, those are the people that sell you stuff on TV now. So I think of course, we've touched on it. 89% of Americans were white back in 1940 when my dad was born, and now it's about 55%. And that the less whiteness doesn't mean so much, Luke. What means so much is there's no real model, you know. And now we live in such a sordid society where people's models are those wretched people on TikTok or, you know, the Hollywood people. Where's those models going to come from? Can I fire that back at you and say, you know what I mean? What they used to tell the stories about the first black people that moved into, say, a white neighborhood, and they kind of had to get them with the program. But then by the time that second wave came, the neighborhood went to crap. And these stories were being recounted by that first wave of black people that said that there came a point where people just didn't listen to old Mr. Johnson, who used to keep everybody in line. You know, that way of being was out of fashion. So they've ripped down all of our symbols of what tradition used to be. So where are we going to get these cultural models from there, Luke Ford?
So if Snoop Dogg told you to burn down the home that you live in, would you do it?
No, but it's the Snoop Dogg types that are telling us everything these days as far as culturally.
Well, if Snoop Dogg types told you to burn down your home, would you do it?
You know I wouldn't, Luke.
Okay, so I don't think anyone else who's smart is going to do it either. It's entirely possible for somebody to enjoy Snoop Dogg and not try to live a thug life. So I don't think Snoop Dogg is going to destroy our civilization. I think role models are vastly overrated. It should come from your own family or your own immediate circles of acquaintance. It doesn't need to be people on TV. I don't think the president of the United States needs to be a role model. Yes. Now, on the other hand, people in prominence do have some influence. They do have some effect. And to contradict what I just said, there is a role model element to anyone who gains prominence. And so I would prefer people in prominence to behave better than worse. But I would not hold with putting great stock in role models. So yes, anyone in prominence has some wider effect, but I don't think that role models from popular culture are very important for people leading a good life. So yes, anyone in prominence has some wider effect. We all have some wider effect. We're all, in certain states, a role model to somebody. And so it's best that we behave better rather than worse. But I don't think that America is going to collapse due to rappers, right? I despise rap music. I have no interest in rap artists. I can barely say those two words, rap artists. But I don't think that's going to be the end of our civilization. And there are plenty of admirable people that people can draw inspiration from and model themselves on if they need that.
Right. Well, when do you think this Kardashian culture started?
Well, I think it was always there. There was always lowbrow culture. I mean, the mainstream media and the universities, they try to suppress this, but George Washington made a sex tape, and the media just won't tell us that. But I mean, there've always been lowbrow expressions of culture. I don't think that Kim Kardashian, yes, with everything there's something new in what they contribute, but they're also part of a long-running train. Like if we were talking 70 years ago, you'd be calling up and saying that comic books mark the end of Western civilization. But I never cared for comic books. They're not my thing. Didn't spend much time reading them, but they were not the end of Western civilization. Radio wasn't the end of Western civilization. When novels became prominent in the 19th century, novels signified the end of Western civilization. When radio came out, radio signified the end of Western civilization. When the internet came along, that signified the end of Western civilization. TV was going to destroy us. So I think people put too much weight on the apocalypse, and the reason that people stress the apocalypse is that it gives them a feeling of importance, because if they're right, then they're very important because they've touched on something that is of prime importance. But I think way too many people catastrophize and spend too much time thinking about the apocalypse, and the more time your average bloke thinks about the apocalypse, the less time he has to be useful.
Yeah. I didn't catch, everybody was filling out, when we had everybody on the line, they were doing a good job of filling in all the dead air. So I just sat there, like a pumpkin on the sidelines. But I really wanted to know where Mike was from. At one time I was going to say, Doovid's up in Detroit and you're out there in LA. Where are you at, Mike? But it didn't come around. So maybe next time.
Well, you can contribute to the chat. I don't recall seeing you in the YouTube chat.
No, but you didn't put me in the timeout with the dunce cap on or anything. But we get to talk a lot. You don't get to hear. Hell, I don't think I've ever seen Mike before. We got to hear his story. You've got to interrogate him, Luke Ford. I know what time it is. He
was on before. He spent 32 years in federal prison for killing some people, but he's paid his debt to society, and now he's on the straight and narrow.
He would know my best friend Ray then.
Yes, he loved Ray
for 25 years. So anyway, I thought about being 2025 coming up. I thought about a new possible soul cleansing segment that you could incorporate into the soul. Into the show for 2025, sort of in the vein of what was that segment Adam Carolla used to have that had something about a Jew? Definitely not a Jew. You remember when he used to have that segment?
Vaguely.
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say this idea for a soul cleansing segment would be the worst thing you've ever done to a Jew, and I would like to make a little contribution, my little offering to kind of get it started off.
Thank you. This should be very cleansing for the soul. Please.
Yes. Back when I was a young lad, probably 17, probably just before maybe even 18, just before I went into the Marines. Again, Detective Clyde, he had his ways, and I was wanting to get out of there. But anyway, before all that, this family, Siegel, there was a girl named Christy. She liked me. I didn't really like her, but what I did like is the golf cart that she had in her garage, right? So I hung out with her a couple of times and then remembered later on, after I had kind of stopped hanging out with her, that she still had that golf cart. And me and my friend Ray, the one that spent 25 years down in federal prison, we went and got that golf cart and we took it to the nearby golf course. And we went around doing donuts and collecting all the flags. Lucky for them, it was only a 9-hole golf course. But I mean, karma is a cruel mistress when she comes after you. And what we had done is we had grabbed one of those Black & Decker rechargeable flashlights that was conveniently right next to the golf course. I mean, right next to the golf cart. And then we had, did all that destruction. We were kids. We had no idea what a green at a golf course was worth, but apparently they're pretty expensive. But we trashed them all, collected up all the flags, and in our moment of celebration, the flashlight went out. And as I'm hitting the flashlight on my leg, trying to get it to come back on, my friend Ray says, "Kip, look out." And about that time, some kind of metal wire came across and turned that golf cart into a convertible, and it raked across like my mouth and went all the way up my head, and it looked like we'd had the hell beat out of us. And that was the cover that we used, because that story was on Crime Stoppers later on that week. They were wanting to know who had destroyed the golf course. But
and
anyway,
did you end up suing that Jewish family because you were
No.
injured while driving their golf cart?
I'm a Gentile. I'm not litigious. But, that's something. I figured the statute of limitations on that was about 1986. So I figured the statute of limitation on that one would probably be over with now. But don't you think that's a nice thing? Then we could have somebody come along. That was a nice little G-rated version. We can have somebody come along and do, a PG version, and then the R version, and then I'm sure you'll find somebody that's got a real sordid tale that'll get them in trouble before it's all over with. But what do you think about that one to get it started?
Yeah, I think that was pretty human. I'm sure that a lot of people did. You know anyone in the order? Did you know like David Lane and the people who shot the Jewish talk show host Alan Berg?
No, I wasn't. They just happened to be Jewish. If they had been a Gentile and that golf course was there, I wouldn't have a story to tell for this new segment. You know what I mean? So,
okay.
In fact, I did not really. They did not publish the fact that they were Jewish, but I realized later on in life the last name Siegel and the fact that they had 2 lake houses and another big ass house that had a golf cart at it. So put 2 and 2 together. They were Jewish, Luke. They were Jewish, no doubt about it. But anyway, I was gonna tell you one little other story about how Ray, he got me into a sort of a pickle one night. By the airport, there used to be a trailer park, and for some reason, he was way too excited about a set of rims that were on a, I don't know, maybe an '83 Ford T-Bird or something. But I mean, it just possessed him for like 2 months. And then one night we had been out running around having a good time, and I thought we were on our way home. I had passed out in the back seat. Little did I know, Ray and had convinced our other friend Eddie to do something evil that night. So I woke up from my nap to hear what sounded like 4-barrel carburetors. I know cars are fuel injected now, but do you remember what the old 4-barrel carburetors sounded like, Luke Ford?
Maybe.
Oh, they just,
yes.
You could just hear them just sucking all the air and all the gasoline all at once. But anyway, I was awoken to the sound of 4-barrel carburetors, bunches of them, just all around me. And when I opened my eyes, blue lights everywhere. So I kind of peeked my head up and I was like, holy shit, we're at that trailer park. I already knew what was going on as soon as I saw where we were. And I could see I could see the cop cars were all around me, and they were all empty. There was no cops in them. And you could see all the cops had little flashlights, and you could see them running off in the distance. And I knew they were running after my friends. I had put 2 and 2 together about what was going on. But what I didn't pick up on is 2 of those stolen wheels were already in the back seat, trunk of that car. I was sleeping in the back seat, and 2 of those stolen wheels were already in the trunk of that car. But anyway, it ended up being something we were able to laugh about. But let's just say I just left the area and walked home that evening while the cops were all gone chasing my friends. I didn't want to find out what happened. But anyway, did you ever have any friends put you in a pickle like that where
No, I did not hang out with criminals.
You hung out with the wrong people. These people were probably more fun than your friends. But one thing I was going to ask you, Luke, is my dad, bless his heart, he liked Playboy. You remember when Playboys always had the best jokes in the Playboy? Each month had a bunch of good jokes in the Playboy episode.
Yes.
Okay. Well, my dad was just a great joke teller, and he would tell me all those Playboy jokes, and he would always also tell me a good smattering of in-person jokes. And then I would just go off to Booker T. Washington School and not be able to tell really any of these jokes to anybody. And I just wonder, what do you think? You think Dad was like setting me up for an ass whipping, or he just didn't really, you think he just hadn't put 2 and 2 together of what Booker T. Washington was all about? What do you think that was? Why would he load my head full of certain types of jokes that you couldn't tell around anybody where I lived?
Well, I expect that he thought that you had the ability to exercise some judgment. I tell people jokes that would not be a good idea to tell in certain situations. So there's a time and place for everything. I remember my brother told this naughty joke to a bunch of girls, and they just screamed with delight and laughter, and they wanted more. So he eventually gave them his full oeuvre of every dirty joke that he knew, and they just loved them. And then when it was finished and he walked off, the girls went and told on him to the teacher, and he got busted.
I remember, yeah, I'm always, I don't know. It's probably me. I remember they used to send me up in my days in banking. They would send me up to this real posh area called Garden City, New York, for these monthly meetings, and it was like a 5-star hotel. And honestly, Luke, the first time somebody knocked on my door and asked me if I wanted turn down service, man, I was thinking something naughty, probably the way you would have been. But anyway, I was such a fish out of water experience that I really never got used to the where they would do they'd come pick you up in a limo and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, I'll tell you how bad of a fish out of water thing it was. I would travel up there with my weed, because I didn't know anybody up there in New York City. So I wasn't going to ask anybody at work for weed, so I would just carry my own. And one time I ran out of papers, and I mean, I walked around a place called Garden City, New York for like 2 hours. They had these things called Dwayne Reeds that they call grocery stores. Their drugstores didn't have rolling papers. I couldn't get rolling papers anywhere. Luckily, a guy had a cook that had left a pack of rolling papers in his like cooking vest or whatever they put on when they're slinging hash. So I kind of got lucky there, but man, it was a 2-hour hunt. You ever feel like kind of a fish out of water experience like that, where you're like, man, this is not me? The limos, the turn down service, the ordering room service and all that stuff.
Well, I remember I went to an Atlantic magazine party with Peter Hitchens and this British novelist, the son of another famous British novelist, and both myself and my friends, we felt a little outclassed. So yeah, so that one party, I remember talking to the daughter of some billionaire family, a lot of very high achieving people at that Atlantic magazine. So yeah, I felt a little intimidated.
Yeah, you were with Peter Hitchens?
As Peter Hitchens and some other people from the Atlantic magazine, but it was the elite, the literary elite who were at that party.
Their mom was Jewish. Their dad, the Commodore, was not Jewish, but their mama was. Did you know that?
Probably. I don't really care that much.
And when Dooovid, or not Dooovid, when Blatt was on last time, somebody made the comment, maybe it was Dooovid, that said he was only half Jew. And I don't know. Is that the same as me? I never had any like full sisters, but I had like 3 half sisters. You think that feels about the same? Having half sisters would be about commensurate to being a half Jew? What does it mean to be a half Jew? I thought it only mattered what your mama was.
So you're a Jew if your mother's Jewish, but if you have one parent who's not Jewish, obviously that is going to be quite unusual in the Jewish community. So half your genetics are not Jewish, and half one side of your family is not Jewish. I think it should be pretty self-evident. So let's say you've got one black parent, one white parent. Is that different from having 2 white parents? Hell yeah. Is that different from having 2 black parents? Hell yeah. Having 1 Asian parent and 1 white parent? Yeah, that's a different experience than having 2 Asian parents or 2 white parents. I don't understand your question. To me, it's obvious that having a family that's coherent, where both people are coming from the same people, is going to be a very different experience than when your parents are from different groups.
Mm-hmm. But most Jews aren't religious at all, right?
Well, it doesn't matter. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. If you've got 1 black parent and 1 white parent, what the hell difference does it make if they're religious or not religious?
Right. For I can't remember the last time I've seen that scenario. One black parent, one white parent. I've never seen them lean towards the white side. Have you?
I
I've
don't
never
know
seen
many. I don't know enough. I'm sure under certain circumstances everyone reacts to incentives. So when Barack Obama spent a lot of time with his white grandparents, and he did not lean into his black identity until well into his 20s, perhaps 30s. So.
I was going to ask you, you being a little bit older than me, did you notice the way there used to be these things called Pollock jokes? There used to be books and books of jokes written, and then they just disappeared in the ether. Maybe sometime in the 90s. When was that? And what they do? Have a big Pollock joke book burning? How'd that happen?
So political correctness, it started growing at the end of the 1980s. So that's what happened.
And what do you reckon the genesis of that was? You think it had something to do with World War II or something? Did they just get cast in some light? Because when I think of Polish people, I think of them as being probably 5 to 8 IQ points smarter than the average American, But yet you and I have all these Pollock jokes, how many Pollocks does it take to do this and all this stuff in our head? And it doesn't really comport with reality to me. Am I wrong there? And what's the genesis? And am I wrong there?
Well, it's always normal to make fun of people who are different. And Poles were immigrants to this country. And so they would have stuck out as awkward. And I don't know the whole genesis of Pollock jokes, but immigrant groups start out as usually as socially awkward and they get made fun of. So then we had the ever increasing development of a more refined, intellectualized, etherealized, buffered Enlightenment identity where one realized that you shouldn't make fun of people based on their ethnic origins. So it's not surprising to me that that became increasingly socially unacceptable in the 1990s.
Right. I didn't live in a melting pot like New York City or whatever. Maybe there was Italian jokes. Maybe there was Mick jokes. Maybe there was all these others. But to me, it seemed pretty distinctive that they made it to the heartland. Let's just put it that way. Were you familiar with a fellow named Bill Lind that used to be on the
William Lind, the kind of centrist intellectual?
Well, he used to
hates
be kind of
Steve Saylor.
He used to be sort of on the right.
William Lind. No, from the American Conservative. Yeah, I'm a big fan of William Lind, right, at the American Conservative, yeah.
Yeah, when you get some time, you got to look up a talk he did in 1998. Man, he was going crazy about it, going all through the universities and basically predicting the situation that we were in now. I'm sure he wasn't the first to predict it. I just thought that he was looked like a doggone Nostradamus. It was either 97 or 98 that he gave a talk, and it's pretty easily available online, but it'd be worth checking out. Another thing I was going to ask you about was, does anybody still follow, I guess, would there be something called pure Judaism? I've heard a couple of guys rapping about the Jews of the Elephantine Islands. They had been ran off from King Nebuchadnezzar.
I would assume that every group has delusions about purity in one particular expression or another. So I think there are some, different types of Jews think that they are the purest expression of Judaism. Right. So it's just part of the human condition that people will be quite likely to think of themselves as pure and superior to everyone else. It happens with Jews, happens with non-Jews.
Yeah, this dude was rapping about, I guess, maybe about these thousands of papyri that down in the Nile, there's this Elephantine Island, and they had ran from Nebuchadnezzar, and they got all these papyri, and on none of them is there anything mentioned about Abraham or Moses or Torah. And of course, this is 600s BC, so it's pretty old. but I just didn't know if they had like, well, like you say, everybody probably claims to be the purest. They probably say that they're interpreting it the best, but I didn't know if that was a thing because that seems pretty damn stripped away. No Moses, no Abraham, no Torah. That's going pretty far back, ain't it, Luke Ford?
Yeah, there aren't any significant movements in Judaism that don't refer to Moses and the Torah.
I was going to say, in our most embarrassing moments, I remembered earlier today when I was walking the dogs about when I was in the Marines, man, I had to shower in front of like 40, 50 dudes, so you get desensitized to it in the moment. And then all of a sudden, my friend Zerlong had tossed me a can of Stalin Moose while we were all in the shower. You remember Stalin Moose? I don't think they do it anymore, but it kind of looked like...
I use Moose at times when my hair gets really long to try to keep it together.
It come out like looking like whipped cream or something. Does it still look like that? Okay.
Yeah, so if you look at my 60 Minutes interview from 2003, my hair is all moosed up.
Oh, okay. So anyway, he threw me a can of Stalin Moose, and I was like, "What's this for?" He says, "That's for the hair on your ass." And I mean, dude, they all looked, they all laughed. Kip was devastated. I don't know, but strangely liberated. I don't know if that's a story or more of a comment, really. Anybody ever like pulled the rug out from under you like that? It's different when you're all naked and stuff, and they start making fun of your damn ass hair. I guess there could have been something worse, but throwing you a can of Moose, that's enough to make a man hyper conscious about having a little fur back there. Ain't it, Luke Ford, 10-4?
Yeah, I didn't go to public schools until 10th grade, so we didn't really have the amount of bullying that you just describe in the private Christian schools that I went to. Got bullied a little bit in public school. I chose not to shower after PE in high school. So some people mocked me for not wanting to get naked in front of other dudes. I'm not sure if that was the reason, but PE wasn't that arduous. I didn't get that sweaty. So I'm not generally someone who's really into getting naked in front of other dudes.
Yeah, well, when was this time frame where you were ducking the showers? What was this age?
I didn't know if I was ducking the shower, but I got mocked for it. But I just don't think I felt sweaty enough. So this is 1982 to 84. But I don't. I mean, to this day, I don't go out of my way looking for opportunities to get naked with dudes.
Yeah, well, I was in the Marines. We don't really have much of a choice. You're just kind of along for the ride of those type deals. But like I say, you get desensitized to it. But anyway, I was going to say, any idea when your IQ starts to wane? I thought that might be a good exercise.
Yes, starts dropping at about age 22.
Yeah. So
you're not going to be as sharp at 22 as you were at 18. So you pretty much hit your peak for mental processing at about age 18.
Well, that's have you ever? I've never checked to see how far mine has fallen. Then because we're on the backside of our 50s. You know what I'm saying? Have you looked into that?
I have not. But I know I don't have nearly the short-term memory that I used to. I know I'm not nearly as sharp as I used to. I know I'm not nearly as creative as I used to be. So
I can't even remember what was on the damn tests. You know what I'm saying? I just remember that it took about 2.5 hours when I had to go off into the Marines and take those. It was a real arduous test. So I'm very skeptical when I have somebody say that they've taken a test online and it was 30 questions and they're this now. I'm very skeptical of that because the Marines needed like 250 questions to figure that out. It wasn't a short little 10 or 20 minute internet survey. But anyway, I think that's about all I've got, unless you got anything you want to share.
I'm good. Thanks, man. Talk to you later. Take care.
All right.
Bye. So you can get a pretty accurate read of someone's IQ just by their ability to remember digits in reverse order. So if you can remember, I think 5 digits in reverse order, that equates with a 100 IQ score. and every additional digit that you can remember after that in reverse order, that's an extra standard deviation. It's an extra 15 points. So taking a 2-hour test, I assume, would be more accurate than taking a 30-question test. But even just the single reverse digits test, just one little test, will give you a pretty accurate read on your IQ. So I just pulled up that memory of my blog post when I felt a little outclassed going to the Atlantic magazine party. So this is what I wrote back in 2004 in May. My life has improved since Kathy Sipe entered it and started introducing me to great gatherings and great people, such as Heather McDonald. Tonight, Kathy picks me up before 10 p.m. We drive to the W Hotel in Westwood for the party thrown by the Atlantic magazine. We spend much of the night chatting with the Atlantic magazine's literary editor, Ben Schwartz. Then Steve Wasserman, the LA Times book editor, joins our conversation. Ben says it's hard to find good female writers who are right-wing. And Ben describes a book that I loved, Tom Wolfe's A Man in Full, as silly and bloated. I was about to deck him when I remembered Kathy's admonition that I had to behave tonight so that she could write for the Atlantic and mix with a better class of people than her Penthouse magazine compadres, though she may not have phrased it exactly like that. Kathy wrote for Penthouse. So I think I see New York Times Hollywood correspondent Sharon Waxman, and I start making my way over to Sharon. But then I realize it's actress Annette Bening, and she is with her husband Warren Beatty, so I stop and I leave them alone. Christopher Hitchens is bigger and younger than I expected. He talks about the revival of piracy, the film Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't care for Christopher Hitchens. I don't care for Martin Amis, the other big star of the night. I don't care for atheistic lefties. They talk a great deal about religion. They have this public dialogue, which neither of them practice. It's like listening to a couple of old whores talking about chastity. I'm sure they might have some provocative intellectual insights, but what's the point? I mean, Chris Hitchens, Martin Amis, they're fine, but they're not people that I look up to or particularly seek out their views. All right, we spend much of the night talking with Barit Campion from Idaho. She's a product of Andover, Dartmouth, and UCLA master's degree in film. She's an aspiring screenwriter and an associate producer of documentaries. She's poised, funny, and fun. She does not believe in screenwriting rules. She does not believe that movies require 3 acts. She's the granddaughter of a stinking rich Colorado mining family. I noticed that Barit tips 15 to 20%. I stick to 10 to 15%. I have chocolate cake and 3 enormous chocolate-covered strawberries. We leave at midnight with an inferiority complex. We see Barit chatting with Peter Hitchens. I would never have had the confidence to introduce myself at her age, says Kathy. Okay, wonder what Barit Campion is doing today. She was beautiful, intelligent, charming woman. So she's the vice chair of some foundation. Barit Campion. Can't figure out what the heck she's doing, but she's all over Google. Let me pull it together. Play some Decoding the Gurus.
What's going on here? And no, all the engineers are just confused. There's some problem. There's something stuck in the pipeline. But only Elon has the overview where he can say, wait, is that piece necessary? And then contact the other department. They're like, oh no, that's not necessary. And then he resolves it and the machine gets roaring up and the factory starts producing better. It's a kind of Factoria image of how things work. And we don't know the specifics of this case, but I can imagine it playing out very differently, where it is more, the more accurate or more realistic thing is maybe some version of that happened, but there are other people involved bringing things to attention. And it isn't just simply that Elon noticed it and was able to resolve it, because he also gives another example about noticing another defect where there was a kind of thing on the battery that two departments had mistakenly understood serving different purposes.
One example was there were 3 fiberglass mats on top of the battery pack. They partially covered the battery pack, and it was.
I am not for capitalism over nationalism. I would be fine with zero immigration, but I am open to a compromise where we have 1% as much immigration as we have currently, but that 1% is of great value to the United States. They have rare skills that we need.
I was on the battery pack production line, and it was the number one thing choking battery pack production were gluing on these 3 fiberglass mats to the top of the battery pack. And so this is the reason I repeat this algorithm myself is that I first did things backwards. First, I try to automate it. Then I try to accelerate it, just have this go faster. Then I try to simplify it, and only then did I delete it. Because it turned out that the team at Tesla that does noise and vibration minimization, so making the car quiet, thought that the fiberglass mats were there because of the battery safety team for battery fire prevention. And then I asked the battery fire prevention team what were they needed for, and they said, oh, noise and vibration. And I'm like, okay. So then we had 2 cars drive, one with a microphone in each car, and you could not tell the difference. So we went to all that trouble for a part that should not exist.
Again, Elon presented that as he worked it out and was able to resolve it. So it's Elon.
And Elliot Black says, give me one reason why going to Mars is important. Well, the primary benefit to trying to go to Mars is that it might stimulate the development of other important technology. So it's not the destination, Elliot, it's the journey. And in the journey of trying to go to Mars, there might well be some excellent developments, right? The internet, we owe the origins of the internet to US military research and development. So sometimes you set some absurdly grand, impossible sounding goal, and in the process of struggling towards that goal, right, there are many positive benefits to setting yourself an impossible goal.
On the engineer maestro, not the detached CEO.
Now, obviously, we don't have the privilege of being a fly on the wall of every one of these production centers, so we can't check these claims. But if you were to believe Elon Musk's version of events, then he's at once a brain surgeon responsible for the advances at Neuralink and also literally a rocket scientist. So it is implausible, I think, that anyone would be jumping around and actually making a significant contribution to these various fields in the same week. It's just
rocket design and electronic car production and social media, like marketing and brain computer interfaces. That is
right. Read the